States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this meeting is being televised by Chelmsford Telemedia. Is anyone else present planning to tape, record? All right, welcome. For those in the audience, if you would like, there's some agendas on the side. If you would like to see what's going on, I just wanted to point out that one of the items that we have on tonight's agenda is a discussion on the upcoming budget. So we have some opportunity for public input on that. So if somebody would like to speak on that issue at the beginning in our public comment or during that point, it'd be fine. If somebody at home is watching and didn't know we were doing that, there should be time to come down and make some comments. We'll also be doing a similar thing on our next meeting. So if anybody has any thoughts on the budget and they want to share it with the committee, have an opportunity tonight and in our next meeting. All right, so our first item of business tonight is approval of our minutes from our last meeting on December 18th.
I move that we approve the school committee meeting. I'll try this again. I move that we approve the regular meeting of the school committee and the minutes for that meeting on December 18th, 2018. I'll try to do better as the evening goes on.
Second.
Oh, God.
Any discussion, any corrections? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 4-0. Great. Okay, next up, we'll hear from our Chelmsford High School representatives.
On January 10th is going to be the after-school concert ensemble groups concert. January 12th will be Choral Fest, which is a concert for the 4th graders and the high school choral groups. And on January 15th through 18th are exams at the high school.
So grades close on the 18th for the high school. Semester 2 will start January 22nd. And we have our Hawaiian dance blackout dance on the 19th.
All right, any good news?
Would you like to?
No, you.
All right, Linda is not with us this evening, but she sent along some good news. So the first, we had the new English National Honor Society recently inducted 66 new members, so that was exciting at the high school. Chelmsford High School is also going to host a visit from poet Clint Smith in the PAC later this month. His collection of poetry is being used in several of the ELA classes at the high school. Third, our math and science departments are conducting joint professional development, starting with today's early release that is centered around instructional strategies. And then fourth, our CHS civics class, and they had come to speak at the last meeting. Mr. Rector had come, visited the State House yesterday. Did you girls get to go?
Yeah, I was on a field trip.
How was that?
It was nice. We went on a tour of the State House, and then we were going to talk to Tom Golden because he came into our class before, but he was busy, so we just looked around.
But it was a good trip otherwise?
Yeah, it was nice.
Good. So that is our good news for this evening.
Okay, anybody else have any good news? Okay, all right, moving on then. Our next up is our regular public comment section. So if there's anybody that would like to address the committee at this time, come forward and state your name. All right. Great.
Exciting time. Our first agenda item of the evening. So this is always fun. Byham Elementary School, Principal Jason Fredette, and a lot of staff and students are here this evening. So I'm going to invite Jason up, and however you want to organize this. But we're going to hear about some of the different activity. Installments. All right. Some of the activities that are taking place at the Byham Elementary this year. So I will turn it over to you. And just please introduce everyone when they come up so that viewers at home will know who people are and what they're presenting.
Make sure the microphones are.
Yeah, and try to speak into a microphone.
Yeah. We're good, because then we'll switch over. All right. Welcome, everybody, from home viewing our presentation tonight. We do have kind of a makeup of presenters tonight. We have, starting with some of our staff, and then some students that'll be joining us as well. I'll kind of go down. We have our assistant principal, Betsy Dolan, 4th grade teacher, Linda Zablak, 2nd grade teacher, Katie Harris, our board certified behavior analyst, Holly Matson-Durkin, and 4th grade teacher, Chrissy Babson. Not to mention the people that are up here presenting too, I also want to certainly acknowledge members of our school council who are really instrumental when we put these presentations together. So we have community members, family members, and also some staff from our school council. So really wanted to acknowledge them as well. So we hope we have a brief, entertaining presentation for you. As I say, brevity is not one of my strengths, so I've passed off a lot of the presenting to others tonight. But our agenda is really three parts. We're going to talk, which I'm sure you've heard about, our positive behavior intervention supports, which you've heard as PBIS. Also roll that in with our Pride initiative that is K-12 throughout the district. We'll talk about kind of those supports and what they look like, and the things that we're doing at Byam. We then will talk about our Tier 2 supports. So we have Holly and Betsy will be talking a bit about the kind of addition that we're doing for students in need of some additional supports beside our all school supports. And then the part you'll all be waiting for, we have our Pride ambassadors, who are our 4th grade student representatives who we began this year. So we'll hear from them, and also Linda Zablak, who is chairing that group with me. So getting into that, the first thing that we really want to highlight for you, so if you look into your packets, some of the things that we have really brought into light this year are a passport group. So every student has received a little individual passport, and it's made up of all of our expectations in 6 locations. You have actually one location in your packet. You have a bus. If you look at it, it looks like a group. It has the bus, our expectations on the bus. And what happened this year, every student went around through the 6 locations with their teacher, and one of our staff members presented them on an expectations tour when they went there. So they would get the expectations from what would happen in each of those locations and would receive a stamp on their passport, just like they traveled through various countries. The glorious countries of the dining room and bus and hallway, all those various travels that they went through. So they did that over a couple of days at the beginning of school to really orient our students into our expectations. And what we did with that as well then, after doing that, is we had the students this year, we developed expectation videos. So part of our expectation videos is to kind of give a visual. They hear kind of a speech and see the location about what those expectations look like during the first weeks of school. But we also thought it'd be great to create videos that we could use and present to students and give kind of a more of a visual piece to what those expectations are. So we're gonna play one of those videos for you. And what we use, students saw these also at the beginning of the year. We're gonna be doing, we just met about it today, very apropos, we met about doing our Tier 1 reboot, which will also include these videos and teachers using the videos. So you're gonna hear about the expectations on the bus, a little short video. There's a video for each of our expectations. But what we'll do here is play this for you, and I wanna, you will, I gotta kinda escape out of here. Same thing that happened today, it's like there. Like a PD all over again. Okay. So you hear video, and then if you have your expectations out there, keep those handy. You might need those if you receive the expectations in your packets. Kind of see where the theme of this is going here.
The music adds a dramatic effect.
Something cathartic about doing this.
So funny.
It was really hot that day too, so the beaded sweat and the tight shirt over the shirt was.
Shoulder check though.
So a couple of things that you might notice in there.
There's a lot to notice.
There's a lot to notice, right? So usually they notice, oh my God, Mr. Fredette was being really bad in that video, and that's what you hear a lot about. But one of the things that is important when we do talk about that is highlighting the positive. So they look at it when they first see it as you're picking out the right things, right? It's funny to laugh at the principal doing these things, and I explained to him it's just acting. And that, you know, I learned it by usually kind of dealing with some of these issues outside, you know, on the bus or other areas. But also they're going through and they're picking out those things that are on your passport. We actually went through every one of those things that's on that passport and what to do. And so when we do that, it's giving them kind of that visual to look back again at it. You also notice those respectful, responsible, and ready. That comes in all of them. They're known as the 3 R's at Byam. So that comes in everything. And at the end, you don't.
I'm sorry, I think your
Something's playing.
video is replaying in the background. It's just people at home are gonna hear that.
There we go. So Jay, this is when you said I'm going to let you control it. This was the this is what was the
Hey,
issue.
you wanted this.
I did want that.
You wanted the control of the presentation.
And you'll also notice at the end, that scroll, that is our behavioral statement that we say every day. And it has the 3 R's right in it, and that's a part of each one of those videos. So if you would, and I have my Pride ambassadors here who have stamps, you have officially been practiced and been introduced to the bus. So if you could just, if you're one of our school committee members, you can just hold up your passport if you had it in there. It's the, if you see it, it says bus on it. There you go. And if our members could come and give you a stamp, you have officially been introduced to our expectations.
You know, I wish that video
Any
had come
piece
out
of
before the
paper.
Golden Globes last
Yes,
night.
I know, I agree. There's,
Was it this one?
You
Yep.
can do it on there, okay? So I don't know where my bus is.
there we go.
Thank you.
And there's 3 stamps throughout the year. They get the stamp when they're initially introduced, they practice it, and then at the end, there's a stamp when demonstrating. So 3 times you go.
I just get one.
All right, and don't go too far, guys, because they're gonna be coming up in a minute. So those have been happening. One of the things, too, that we also do with our expectations is we do grade level meetings. So we'd have during lunch times, Mrs. Dolan, myself, our guidance counselor, Don Giswaldi, go in and we do kind of highlight a little bit more in-depth certain things, whether it be part of Pride or 3 R's. We have grade level meetings that we can have an attentive audience and tailor it a little bit more towards our grade level. So certainly a kindergarten meeting around some things would look very different than our meeting with fourth graders, and how we might talk a little bit more candidly with this group about some things and preparing them for middle school, while our grade level meetings at kindergarten certainly are kind of an indoctrination to a lot of these things that they're hearing for the first time. And one other thing, the last piece that I want to touch upon for Tier 1 was kind of the second step integration. While this has kind of been a loose part of what we've done, we've really tried to use this, what is a social and emotional curriculum that the Chelmsford Public Schools use, but we really tried to kind of match it with what we're doing with the expectations, the PBIS, our 3 Rs. We think about the expectations of what they should be doing when and how and where. And what the second step talks about are really critical skills that students need to learn to be able to kind of practice and manage stress and emotions and how they deal with relationships. So some of the teachers I thought could just chime in a little bit on how those kind of things go and give them a little picture about that second step and how it's been kind of tied into those Tier 1 supports.
Sure. So the second step curriculum helps students not only with social and emotional success, but also academic success. It begins with a warm-up that's followed by a lesson. And the lesson has a card for the teacher, so that's clearly focused on what you'll be doing throughout the lesson. And there's then time for the students to role play or act out various activities. So they may be acting out how to act responsible, and then you can then carry that over into whether it's the dining room, the bathroom, the hallway, the bus, the classroom. Sometimes there's a song or dance to help get those skills and strategies into place. And it covers self-regulation, empathy, and emotional management. So it's not just something that you're doing, once a week within that half hour or 45 minutes, but there are things that we cover in elementary school all day long.
Anyone else? You nailed it. All right, no other takers.
Held it.
So what we're going to focus on next, and this is, so I might have you, Betsy, come over and switch seats with me here, just for a minute if you want to do this slide. So you and Holly can be next to each other, but talking about our Tier 2 supports, which has been a new jump for us this year. We kind of paved the way. Tier 1, if you think about kind of the MTSS triangle, if anybody at home or any of our school committee members think about that, it's Tier 1 is what every student gets. Tier 2 then is what students who might be needing some additional support would get. They still get all things in Tier 1, but we've created kind of a system and some opportunities to address Tier 2 for some students that need, just like you would any other academic support, support in other kind of realms in the social emotional piece. So I'll have people present this, and I'll step out of the way and stop talking.
Gave part of my my discussion away. No, just joking. Good evening. Thank you all for inviting me and all of my colleagues here to discuss the work we've been doing this year on the elementary Tier 2 team initiatives. As previously mentioned, the concept of PBIS follows the model of a multi-tiered system of support, with Tier 1 being the universal approaches to fostering a positive learning community. Over the past 2 years, we have seen how the Tier 1 strategies and expectations that we teach, practice, and recognize every day have helped create a predictable and positive learning environment at the Byham Elementary School. The Tier 2 screening process and opportunities we'll discuss today provide additional supports, as Jason mentioned, to our students who may need something beyond the Tier 1 strategies for either externalized or internalized concerns. The goal of the Byham Tier 2 team is to create and implement additional opportunities for those students to help them meet their social, emotional, and behavioral needs, thereby ultimately increasing the time they get to spend in the classroom and decreasing the potential need for any more intensive interventions. It is also a way that we can provide additional support to the staff at the Byham Elementary School. Last year was very pivotal for solidifying Byham's PBIS Tier 1 initiatives. And as we moved along, our school community became invested in learning and implementing those various strategies of school-wide positive supports, while continuing to foster what I consider a universally positive culture of our students and staff and their families. I am very fortunate to work there. I have to say, I work with some really, really great people. Principal Fredette was very proactive in establishing
an initial Tier 2 team at the end of last year, we recognized, even from the get-go, that this was something that was going to be very important for our students and our staff. But we wanted to make sure that we had a nice, solid foundation for that Tier 1 before we moved on. So we collaborated with Eric Mann and the Tier 1 team to discuss who can comprise the Tier 2 team and some of our possible goals for the upcoming year. And prior to returning to school, we solidified the participants for the 2018-19 school year in the Tier 2 team. The team is comprised of 2 behavioral and mental health professionals, myself and Dr. Maura Cole, who is our school clinical psychologist, and 2 of administrators, Principal Jason Burdett and Assistant Principal Betsy Dolan. And I have to say we're doubly fortunate to have Betsy on our team because she has a excellent and very strong background in social emotional learning. With well, I'm just saying, and her past experience as a school counselor. So after many discussions and rough drafts, many discussions, and many rough drafts, we came up with our initial launch of our Tier 2 opportunities. And Assistant Principal Dolan will be discussing our universal screening and decision day process, and then I will return to discuss some of those opportunities.
Yep, so just on the next bullet, the universal screening. So the teachers in about November timeframe were given information about how to screen as a universal screener, not just for externalizing behaviors, but also the internalizing behaviors. We wanted to make sure that we weren't missing students that might need supports that may not be showing up as much as the externalizing types of behaviors. So each of the teachers went back and really thought about if there were any students that perhaps they needed some extra support. And I do want to add, PBIS in the Tier 1 and Tier 2 is a lot of preventative work, prevent perhaps behaviors or any types of social emotional things from declining or getting worse. It really does add a huge prevention piece. So the teachers, some felt very comfortable with where their students were at in their classroom. They perhaps may have had students already that were receiving supports, and so not every teacher had to bring forward particular students, but those that did were able to mark them down on this universal screener form and then turn them in, and we as a team pulled together that information and put together 2 days in December 5th and 6th, that we called decision days, where we met with each teacher, each general ed teacher individually for about 25 minutes on one of those 2 days, so that they really had a focused, our focused one-on-one or one-on-4 attention to hear, what was, what their feelings were about those particular things in the classroom. And we were really able to give some expert advice, perhaps for some situations where they were just going to kind of keep an eye on things for perhaps one situation, whereas another situation we said, we need to kind of delve in a little bit deeper on this one and add in some possible skill building opportunities for that particular student. So we had a structure of, did you want me to mention the actual opportunities?
Oh, I have that next. I'm
Okay.
doing that. Okay.
All right.
So back to me.
Back to you.
Sorry, you have to listen to me again, ramble on. So as she was stating, in addition to the universal screening and decision day process, we met to create some various opportunities and supports for those students to match their specific needs. And one of the groups is we had 4 specific groups: mindfulness, morning motor group, check-in, check-out, and a game group. The mindfulness group is going to meet 2 times a week for about 15 minutes and will be facilitated by our school counselor. And I'm just going to give you the definitions that describe the groups that will be shared with parents. Mindfulness is described as paying attention to yourself and the world around you. It offers the opportunity to pay attention to our lives in the here and now and be more present in the moment. And we do this with kindness and curiosity. This group will focus on teaching the 5 elements of the mindfulness program. And the school counselor will also be sharing with parents those practices and strategies that the children are learning so that they can observe their child using them and discuss with them. So we're also working towards pulling the school community and parents into this process. The check-in, check-out group is going to be facilitated by Jason Fredette and Dr. Maura Cole with a variety of staff volunteers. The check-in, check-out takes into account that transitioning into school at the beginning of the day and sometimes transitioning out of school at the end of the day can be very stressful for some of our students. And the research shows is that starting the day and ending the day in a predictable way with a consistent, friendly adult, someone that you have built a rapport with, can really help make students feel comfortable and confident with their day. There'll be a designated check-in and check-out manager, and students will meet with them at the beginning of each day to have an encouraging conversation and set goals to get that day started. The classroom teachers will also be participating in this, and throughout the day, they will be giving feedback to the student and at specific timed intervals, just so the child can have that continued motivation and information and reinforcement. And at the end of the day, that child will meet with that same person that they met with in the morning, and they can look over that feedback card and they can add some consistent, comforting end of the day transition and really help the child kind of preview or review their day. And again, just to reiterate, we have some wonderful staff who have committed to this opportunity for these kids, and the adults and staff will be serving that capacity as the managers of that. The game group is being facilitated by Dr. Cole and myself. I have to say Dr. Cole has done most of the heavy lifting on this in terms of really solidifying the protocol for it. But we'll be meeting with groups of 4 students at grade level during 1 recess a week. The game group is a social skills group where students will have access to peers in a safe, structured setting with an adult, myself or Dr. Cole, and we'll initially be orchestrating their play with the intent of them transitioning to independently playing with one another. And our focus was really to helping them learn the rules of social engagement, providing support around self-advocacy, how to engage in reciprocal conversations, and being flexible. Sometimes it's difficult when conflicts arrive with our kids for them to really manage those at the different age levels. So really providing opportunities for them to learn from each other in a nice, safe, and structured setting. And building some of that frustration tolerance that is obvious when even I play cards in my family. I don't know if anyone, Monopoly is always a little bit vicious. No, just okay. So anyway, it will also help work with the kids to take turns and wait patiently. And then the last group is our morning motor group, which is being facilitated by Assistant Principal Dolan with input from our PE teacher. And the motor group is going to offer opportunities for students to practice motor movement, activities that have worked with many adults and children to help them manage or regulate their motor, how they're working, inside. And that doesn't just mean our kids, a lot of people think it's the kids that are hyper and very active. It's also some of our kids who might have a hard time getting going, and they might need that little boost to kind of re-energize them and get them ready to learn. And also to help them build some new skills to do their best work socially and academically. In addition to those 4 opportunities that I just mentioned, we do have various ongoing social skills groups and lunch bunch groups that our school counselor works with, and some of the kids that were identified will be invited to participate in those groups also. And then I will be collaborating with grade level teams to offer whole class lessons once a week for about 15. They're like little mini video modeling lessons, which will teach some social skills, which vary from conversations to following school rules. So, to wrap it up, I know it's long-winded, but we are running these programs for 6 to 8 weeks and monitoring the outcomes via feedback or data that we collect either from the teacher, the facilitator, the students, and family members to determine if it's effective. Ultimately, this is working. And do we need more time? Do we need less time? Is it a good program for the child? And do we need to make some adjustments? Is the way we have outlined our programs, does it need to be tweaked? And so that is where we are.
Thank you, Holly.
We have our ambassadors come join us now over here at the front. So I teased Holly too because I said I was going to be brief. And then we knew Holly was going to talk. She is probably next in line for not brief. She was very passionate and great explaining it. But then we said, Holly's going to do tier 2. Well, all right. So just kind of as I go along, I had mentioned, we have Linda Zablak here, who is our staff kind of liaison to this group and 4th grade teacher. So she really organized our 4th grade team to be part of this. I have Lewis to my left, Ethan, Aliha. We have Evelyn, Sonia, and Amelia. These are our Pride ambassadors. And to talk a little bit about how this was created, Linda and I got together and kind of thought a bit about how we could really involve some of our students in the decision-making process. That's not always the case in elementary school. I had a background as an assistant principal in running a student council, which I absolutely loved and had student input. Something that I'd really kind of thought about at Bayern, but had a hard time kind of pulling all together with various things going on and where to make it work. Linda, too, also being kind of starting from the middle school end of things, too, had a bit of that process. So, Linda, if you want anything you want to share about kind of that background of yours, if you wanted.
Well, I'm really, really proud of our Pride ambassadors here, not only for the work that they're offering to do, but also for the enthusiasm that they have. Every time we've had our meetings, they're right there and smiles on their faces, ready to go. As teachers, we always strive to let our students understand that their voices really matter as we build our school community and our classroom communities. And this Pride ambassadors, we're hoping for them to realize that their voices do matter as they kind of push forward and share the thoughts of the whole school community at Bayern. So up to date, they've been very honest in sharing what they've felt and what they're thinking about in terms of pride and the 3 R's of being respectful, responsible, and ready to learn at school. And we're really looking forward as we move on with our next steps with the program. So kudos to the kids.
Yep. And so I think one of the things we think about, we as adults come up with all these things that we think are super motivating for kids, right? We think these are all these great things. And, we asked them not to pull any punches. Is this something that you like to do? So one of the things we had talked about in one of their bits of homework to do, and they get homework and they meet at recess. So these kids are super, right? So they taking that on, willing to do that. What we had asked them to do is kind of figure out what some things we usually have a mid-year incentive, and we reach a goal with our roars, and we've chosen that as a adult committee for the last several years. So they're kind of hopefully getting some input from peers and some brothers and sisters and younger students to figure out what would be a really motivating thing. Did we do we did Crazy Hat Day? Is that really motivating, or is there something that we've worked really hard showing our expectations, showing our Pride core values we might want to do? So they do also come and they have, we have agendas, very official. I told them just the other day, we run this meeting like I do with adults. You have agendas, you have your time to speak. I think initially they were in awe sitting in the principal's office because this is typically the group that is not there. For certain reasons, and they were there and had been great now, and I feel like now we've been doing it for a while, much more loose in the conversation flows. So we do look for their input, and we want them to kind of have that sense of representation. One of the things that was really, there was a lot of 4th grade students that were certainly worthy of this, And as I went to each classroom to present them with the letter, one of the things that I was just really impressed with, obviously these guys getting those things, but their peers cheering them on, right? So I've, in my past years had really upset students, really upset parents that didn't make, families didn't make student council. In the past, these guys had really the support of their friends and their peers, and I think you guys would echo that, right? They were excited for you, which was really awesome. So, we figured out a format here. This isn't always the most talkative group. Great ideas, but it takes a little. So we filmed a little film for you again. And then what we thought is you would be able to actually ask some questions and they could elaborate. We've talked a little bit about what you might ask. And I said, you never know what's in the mind of a school committee member. So we prepared them for as much as we could think about you might ask. But we're going to play this short video for them and for you, and hopefully you can get some ideas about what you might want to ask them. You're not getting that?
I'm gonna blame Linda even though she's not here.
It's going fine for the people at home. The viewers in the room are having trouble with the audio, but it's showing on TV fine for the people at home. We may have to improvise here. Well, we can watch the video, but then we may have to kind of
Sure.
ask some of our own
Yep.
questions to
Yeah,
start the
absolutely.
dialogue. You getting any volume on the computer now? I don't think it is. I think it's the home mic.
It worked for the other video, so I don't think it's a TV.
Yeah.
Did you check on the YouTube video?
We can. Jay and I had a little struggle with the YouTube video, so
Yeah,
I
so
am
the
actually going to
volume's
cut
down.
it short.
The volume on the YouTube's down.
Oh, okay.
I know, because
Is it? Oh, there it is, right there.
it's a little better.
A little better.
Yeah. We're gonna have
I
so
think
many
they're too far
questions.
away from the mic when the recording was going on.
All right, so now, guys, I told you we wouldn't be put you out in these questions. What I'm going to do, and I trust them. I trust them as ambassadors. We did have 3 things that we asked. So we asked, I think it was Lewis and Aaliyah were first, and we talked about what kind of were their things that they enjoyed a bit about Pride to start. So do you feel comfortable kind of sharing that with these guys? Okay, great.
I think we show pride well with the pride postcards. So at one of our pride assemblies, we will, Mr. Fredette will call our name and we would stand up. And then later on, we will get one of these in the mail and with a little note on the back. And I've gotten it for the past 4 years, I think. And I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so those are for role models, right? Kids, not everybody gets a postcard, so those are things. And then Aaliyah, who was new to our school this year, came from Harrington, so things were a little different. So it was nice to get her perspective, and I think she talked a bit about roars that you could earn, too.
Just pull the microphone closer to it.
I like the roars because Mr. Fredette, in the morning, he announces your name on the announcements, and you also get a sticker that says "Ask me about my roar," and if our school earns enough roars, we get a school prize.
So far, so good, right? Now, so next we asked, the next question was, now thinking back, we were asking about how you felt when you were chosen for, to represent the Pride and be a Pride ambassador. So that was, we had Amelia and we had Sonia over there. So do you guys mind if you can kind of move the microphone a little bit? Be great.
God.
I was very excited to have more pride at the school, and I think it's very fun because we went on a scavenger hunt for places where we thought where there should be more pride.
And Sonia, how about you?
When I found out that I got chosen to be a Pride Ambassador, I was very happy and very excited to share my point of view about pride in the school.
And then the final, we asked Evelyn and Ethan, the last one was, what do you think you would hope to accomplish being a Pride Ambassador?
To have pride continue even after the 6 of us leave the school.
Yeah, so they were looking for that. And yeah, Ethan, what about you?
I hope to have everyone in the school, not just the students, but the teachers, to show pride.
So they kind of brainstormed about these things, and you're missing the video of the scavenger hunt, which was really expertly crafted and put together very well, that you won't see at home. But they did do a Pride scavenger hunt. And what we asked them to do was look around, and Mrs. Ablack had come up with a form, and they worked in pairs to go around and find where they saw evidence of pride and evidence of our 3 Rs, but also where they think it's missing. Right, from a student's point of view, right? We're sticking up posters all the time, and we're adults sticking them up. So they came up with great ideas where they think it should be and what specifically should be there too. So this group is getting up and rolling, but I've really one of the joys of my week when I get to meet with these guys because their ideas are wonderful, and giving them a vehicle to do that has been great. So I will allow any questions. They did a great job here, so nothing too over the top, everybody, but they'd be happy to answer questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, and this is not biased at all. Do you guys think that the Byam is the best school in Chelmsford?
Not biased at all.
Not biased at all. It's a good answer.
Well, I do want to say that I don't have any questions because you did such an expert job at being able to answer. Every question I thought of ahead of time, you all answered very, very well. So congratulations on your being chosen to be a part of, to be a Pride Ambassador. And I think that, I think your school is represented very well.
Now, do you guys work at all with the other grades and getting them ready to take over this responsibility?
So that's one of the things we're working at, kind of. They have more access to their 4th grade group. But Evelyn, you had kind of made a suggestion too about how we thought maybe we can get, it was in the video. Do you want to share a bit about what that?
Having a suggestion box for the lower grades.
Yeah, so we talked about having a suggestion box where they could sort through and kind of come up with common themes against that. So they really have great idea. I think very little bit of leading and they take away with it, and it's just kind of having that opportunity. And these guys too also, there's not been Pride since when I had first started here, it was up and coming, but now these guys have been, this is their 5th year at Byam, so they've kind of been one of those test groups that's had this from kindergarten to day on. So I can't, very proud principal when I get to bring these guys up in front of you. Are there any general questions that's we can answer for you or any viewers at home about the Byam?
Well, I guess let me ask you a question for you. So the fourth grade is a big year, right?
Yes.
So we got a very big year coming next year, going to 5th grade. Is there a particular element of pride that you see exhibited at Byam that you hope continues at the middle school when you go there next year? Is there something really special that happens pride-wise at Byam that you want to have happen in middle school?
Good question.
That's a good question.
You could do, I don't want to put you on the spot, we could think about it. And if you ever wanted to invite me to one of your meetings at the school, I'd be
That
happy
would
to
be
come
great.
by. And
We'll have to vote on it. We need a 4-6 quorum.
Yeah, if you, it can be controversial, but if you can secure the votes for me to be able to come over and have a meeting with the kids, I'd love to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think we'd love to have you, Dr. Lang. That would be quite an honor to have you at our meeting.
Principal Fredette, I did have one question on the
Yes.
Tier 2. I was wondering if at any point parents are invited into this process so that they understand, kind of what's happening.
Yep. Great question. So we've kind of been doing our general communication with families through newsletters and then a general letter. Teachers actually we're reaching out to families to have the initial phone conversation, share a bit about that group, and then there's a permission slip for parents if they'd like for students to take part in it. And then as our 6 to 8 weeks go, they get information on the group, but also then it's kind of a decision the parents are a part of at the end of that 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
Is that a group that wants to continue? The hope is in these 6 to 8 weeks, it's a great boost and kids can move on. Some kids, there might be a different decision made. It's a group that might continue, would be a need for them, or it might not have been the right match of, But it is, certainly a process where they're gonna have close contact with, and also access to the managers who are kind of those experts in those groups, so, as well, if the questions come up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just had a quick question. So, you're all fourth graders. Are you guys in the new classrooms? In the new building? Yeah, how do you guys like the new building? Yeah, do you guys get to use the screens in class? Sometimes? You want to use them more, probably? Yeah. That's all.
So I think they like being over. It's like where there's certainly some difficulties. One thing that Linda had brought up, it was nice to have them back in the main building doing that scavenger hunt and looking through the lens of those other students. But also it's almost like the fourth grade academy out there.
Yeah,
They feel
that's what I thought.
Yep, feel kind of cool being out there.
Well, thank you.
Right.
Oh,
Thank
yeah,
you.
I was just gonna say, Byham's such a busy place. There are special things going on all the time. What's the best day of the year at Byham? We
I will
have
not be
a lot
offended
of
if you say
fun.
the last
Can be
day of
after
school,
school
yeah.
at night, anything, because you guys are lucky you have a lot of things going in the afternoon and at night. What's the best day, the best thing?
Boo Bash was pretty good.
Boo Bash was really cool, yeah.
The science fair was really
Science fair.
I had a lot of fun. So
What's that, Amelia?
I like the book fair.
Oh,
All right, yeah.
Book fair is
That's
a
a
good
good
one.
one. That's a good one.
Well, there's so many things. I know it's hard to pick.
First day
Thank
of school is my favorite,
you. Yeah,
always.
good.
All right, well, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you
Yes.
very much for coming.
Very much.
Very nice to meet you guys.
Fair warning, Mr. Fredette.
Oh, yeah.
You have 2 Moses children in your building next year.
I know, I don't
Yep.
know if we're gonna be ready for it.
Yep. That was fun. I love when the kids come.
Yeah. What? It was adorable, yeah.
Very serious.
Why don't we just give the Byham kids a minute to filter out if they want to? And while we're doing that, our next item of the evening is a program update on the Strive program over at the South Row Elementary School. So I'd invite Molly McMahon, the principal of South Row, and Amy Reese, our director of special education, to come forward. We'll just give them a minute to clear out. I'll get your presentation going. But if you recall, go ahead.
I was to say, while they're shuffling out, I was just kidding about the best school thing. South Row. I was just kidding about the best school thing.
Yes. Did you know that all the elementaries were in
I
the
did.
house?
I absolutely saw you back there.
I will note that you apologized after the Byham left. All the others were in the building. But no, last year, we actually, when we were going through the process of kind of building our budget and taking a look at district-wide, some of our programmatic needs, and this also came up through the coordinated program review, there was a need at the elementary school level for some additional therapeutic programming. So I don't want to take the presentation away from you, so I'll share it with Molly and Amy. But we're thrilled to have you in tonight to kind of talk a little bit about how the program has gone, how the implementation has developed, and we'll turn it over to you.
Great. Well,
And
thank
you-
you for having us. And thank you so much for inviting us up after super cute children. I know. Makes it very hard to follow. But we will try to give you an update. I know that Amy and I were here last spring presenting on the program, and we're really excited to tell you about how it's going. I just want to first, a couple of opening remarks. I just want to, thank all the new staff, the Strive staff. They're just an amazing team. We, again, have a board-certified behavior analyst, BCBA, 2 special ed teachers, a set of paraprofessionals for the program, and they've just been an incredible team. But I also would say that they can't do this job without guidance and psychology have been a huge part of this, as well as, we have a new assistant principal. Mary Jane McCardle's our SPED team chairperson, as well as our entire staff has embraced the program, and I think that that makes a huge difference. So I just want to make sure that I acknowledge that. In preparing for this program, I know Amy and I spoke with Strive staff, et cetera. we were trying to present you with enough information so that you felt like you knew what was happening with the program, but we also were pretty purposeful in some of our omissions, as any special ed program. You know, we want to be very careful with confidentiality and privacy. So, you know, we've prepared something that we hope gives you enough information. We're happy to answer your questions, but just want to also keep that in mind as we present on this particular program. As you know, we presented the mission of the program last spring, and it's up there. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but I think one of the things that's kind of become our unofficial motto is really striving for independence. And as much as we want to provide all the supports, you know, with adult support, we also want this to be something that then kids can kind of continue on their own. It was also interesting listening to Byam. Southborough has also engaged in Tier 1 as well as Tier 2 for social emotional learning, and we're kind of simultaneously working on some Tier 3 supports with having the Strive program in the building. But we're really trying to make sure that we're giving kids the tools to stay regulated, to understand their emotions, so that they can be successful and in the school. So next slide. So what you'll see in the presentation is sort of, we're going to start with a little bit of quantitative data. We're going to end with some qualitative quotes, and in between talk about kind of what's happening within the program. So this pie chart up there shows you kind of 3 different pieces, and I'll explain that this is also an entire average, you know, up until this point in the year of every student in the program, every single day, all of their data analyzed. And when I say this is their data, the data that is taken on a daily basis is incredible. Again, I give our BCBA paraprofessionals and 2 teachers credit for that. But as you can tell, what's really amazing is that about 76% of the time, again, this is an average of all the kids, on any given day, individuals could be doing better than this. They could have had a tougher day than this, but this is a total average of the time that they're spent in the inclusion setting. So this isn't just that they're learning, this is also that they're back in general education. And I think this has been our goal from the start, is to give tools to students with social emotional needs to be in the classroom, just as we have academically for so many students. Again, in the blue is a percentage of time spent out of class, but they're utilizing a coping strategy. I think one of the things that's made this program so successful is that when students choose to take a break, it's neutral. So it's certainly not looked at as a bad thing, it's a really good thing, but it's also not overly reinforced where students feel like they want to be out of the classroom more than they want to be in. I think that's been kind of a key component that our BCBA has built in, that it is much more reinforcing to be in the general ed classroom and learning with your peers and hearing the lessons. And I think that's been really key for this. In addition, obviously, you know, students have a social emotional need in this program, and so there have been times that they've had to be out of the classroom for disruptive behaviors, challenging behaviors, and they're not ready to learn. But it's excellent percentages. This has far exceeded any of our expectations for the program.
Holly, do you have any baseline data for, sorry.
No, it's a great point. One of the things I was going to say is I wish I had data on students previously, wherever they were, and so that I could compare this, but we actually didn't. Not every student has that data.
Sure, okay.
Yeah. You know, some have come from other districts,
Absolutely.
other programs, et cetera, and so they didn't take the same type of data.
Okay.
Some of our students have some data, you know, from previous years, you know, BCBA involvement,
Sure.
et cetera, throughout the district.
Well, this
We
is a
don't-
good place to start,
It
too.
is, and I would add that I think, you know, given the structure of the way the program was designed with the staffing that we have there as well, allows for that data collection to be an integral
Absolutely.
part of it.
Yep.
So not just to collect data to say, hey, this is how good students are doing.
Right.
But also to take that data, maybe when they're not, to be able to then program and tweak and
Right,
shift things
absolutely.
so that students can meet with success.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So in order to understand sort of that quantitative data, I wanted to start with that because I just think that it's such an amazing number and pie chart, but I just wanted to explain kind of the levels of support that we're able to provide, you know, having this program. Again, I started to say this, but inclusion in the general ed classroom is reinforced greatly. It's really positive. There's point sheets, and they're earning their points for being in the classroom and engaged, not just being present, but they have to be doing the right thing and engaged, which is great. They also have a choice to take a break, but again, it's neutral, so it's not rewarding, which again has been key to this. They can be reminded that they need a break, and again, that's still neutral. You know, sometimes we all need a reminder that we might need to step away from something. There is a timeout factor. They may have to be removed from the environment. They are not ready to learn. But I will say that has decreased tremendously since the start of the school year, or as a child has entered the program. They really have understood and bought into their programming, and it's been very successful. In addition, some of the students have academic goals. Not every student has academic support needs, but some students do. So they are also able to receive their pull-out services just like any other special ed student that might need pull-out services. They're able to receive that because we have special education teachers assigned to the program, which has been really important as well. And then, of course, we have the capacity for sub-separate if a child really couldn't be in the general ed classroom, and we certainly are happy to use that if needed, but we're just very excited to say that right now we don't have any student that is sub-separate in a Strive room. They're really out in the general education setting.
That's a little surprising, because I think that initially when we started with the Strive program, we expected it to be a sub-separate program, right?
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really terrific.
really
That's
think-
really a lot of hard work on your staff's part.
I was gonna say it's instrumental in the staffing that we were able to hire and their focus of working together as a team and then putting that level of supports in place. I also think it has to go with what was implemented to provide supports for students. So therefore, they're getting the right supports that they need to be able to access and be present in the classroom.
And not just your Strive staff, but all of your staff.
Yes.
So that's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit at the end. I mean, I think we're definitely still a work in progress. And I don't doubt that at some point there may not be maybe somebody currently in the program or somebody new that may need that. But at least the potential is there, that if they are not ready to be in a general ed setting, they can still continue to learn and access education, and that's really important. And we started to talk about some of this already, but just there's a continuous data review. So, data is taken all day long by paraprofessionals, teachers, et cetera, working with students. And again, I think the key to this, and I know you heard from Holly here based on function, but basically our BCBA really does a lot of work to collect information called an FBA, Functional Behavioral Assessment. So she tries to find out what is the function of a child's behavior. So is it escape? They want to get out of something? Is it avoidance of something? Is it attention seeking? And therefore, you can provide replacement behaviors and rewards that actually reinforce what you're seeking. So it's been really instrumental. You can't really create a behavior plan if you don't know what the function of the behavior is. So that's been really helpful, and it's based on individual goals for students. The other piece of this that I think has been really successful is that just having them in general ed hasn't been enough for the staff. They are continuously pushing them to be even better. So just because they're in general ed learning, that's fine, but they're reducing the amount of reminders that are allowed on their point sheets. They're upping the criteria on their point sheets. They're really trying to make sure that they gain the skills and the strategies and internally gain those to be able to kind of emotionally regulate themselves and be able to stay in class and learn, which is obviously the ultimate goal.
And that kind of goes back to that goal of the motto of being independent, being able to kind of do that and self-regulate independently.
Yep. And just kind of looking at the students that are struggling is then, are we really addressing the right function? So maybe we are not addressing the function properly if this is not working for them. And the data that has been taken, again, I mentioned some of this already, but we've reviewed records of students from previous records. If parents have information, again, there's been a functional behavioral assessment per child in the program to make sure that we are programming them correctly. And then, of course, they have a behavior plan that's specific to them. And it really, one of the things that's been nice, again, with our BCBA's involvement too, is she's really tried to build upon kind of what you heard from Byam as well. At South Row, we have respect, responsibility, and safety. That's the only thing that's different. Theirs is ready, ours is safety. And so she's kind of used those three rules of our school, expectations of our school, to really build their programs upon. Now, within that, it might look different per student of what are we working on with this student in order to be responsible or respectful, but she's really built off of the tiers of support so that they are also fully included in our school environment and kind of our school goals, which has been nice. She's also been able to push into other buildings to evaluate, and we have already been able to use the 45-day assessment, which is something that we spoke about.
That's great.
I don't know if you want to talk about the purposes that we've been able to meet them.
About the what?
The purposes.
Of each one of these. So we have identified, students at the elementary school level that have needed this higher level tier of social emotional support in order for them to be successful. That was one of the main focuses when designing the program. We also looked at students who have moved into the district. So this year we did have some students that were new to the Chelmsford Public Schools that came in with similar IEP programs that reflected such a program as the STRIVE program. So we were able to kind of, with that transition of the student in, have a program in the district that can meet their needs versus prior not having it and would have maybe looked at a district. Students identified in the district during the school year, we've had the BCBA, that's usually where we've started, come over, maybe meet with the different elementary school staff, consult with the team, present some ideas, come do some observations, come give some ideas in that environment, and then talk and put a process in place to, if we needed to, shift a student over after the year started, which we have done. And then the 45-day assessment piece, where we had a new student that was new to us as well, and was really struggling from the get-go of the year, and utilize, getting more data to see what supports that student was going to need in the program.
And then I think I failed to acknowledge the parents and the families within the program at the beginning of the presentation, so I apologize about that, but I think they've also been instrumental. Wonderful families that are, working with us, and I think that's also been really important for students to see the carryover and the communication. So daily, based on the point sheet that the child gets throughout the day, at the end of the day they do a checkout, and they kind of reflect on their day with their teacher, and then they actually fill out, upper grades fill out their own communication sheet home, telling their parents how it went and explaining, and the parents sign at night and send notes back, etc. And they've just been very supportive in the carryover as well, which has been so key to then the next day, more success. Obviously, just like any student in our building, there's lots of outreach to parents, whether it's phone calls, conferences, et cetera, but again, obviously through IEP meetings, they've been supportive as well. And then we've also been able to coordinate with outside services if needed. If there are outside providers, we're able to do that. The staff is able to do that so that they can make sure that they are meeting all the needs, and there's that constant communication and that full community working with the child. So what I thought I'd do next, the next few slides are just a bunch of quotes. So we thought we would reach out to a couple of parents, a couple of our staff members, and find out kind of what they were thinking about the program. So I'm not going to read the entire quote on each slide, but I'm just going to highlight a portion of each. So this is from a parent within the program. And just one thing that I wanted to highlight is kind of in the middle of his quote, but just he said, with the South Row program, the teachers and staff, his self-esteem has grown significantly. I think this is just really telling you want students to feel good about coming to school every day, and the fact that he does is great. And the next quote, again, is from another parent. This is a very long quote, parent very passionate and very appreciative of the program. I'm just going to actually read the third bullet of his. So my students' behavior academically and at home has seen a major 180, meaning turnaround. The willingness to self-improve or self-assess has actually been able to work, where in previous years it was a very self-destructive environment. The work-rest cycle has increased from 7 minutes of work to 15 to 20 minutes of rest, over a half day's work with little or no breaks at all, meaning the amount of time out of class taking breaks has significantly changed. Through your staff's diligent work with my student to make him more aware of himself and his emotions, I believe that he has developed some of the best internal coping strategies. So it's definitely a student that's grown into a lot of independence in the building, which is great. The next one, as I think was mentioned too, is that this is obviously a staff effort. And so, we put this district program in one building, and so, making sure that our general ed staff felt able to be part of this program and could have students in their classroom and work with the new staff is incredible. I actually just love this entire quote. I just think it really says a lot about both sides of things, so I am going to read this one. The STRIVE program has many benefits in my general education classroom. The student receiving STRIVE services has supports necessary to effectively participate in as many classroom activities as possible. By having behavior goals, a space for sensory breaks, and academic support, my student can remain in the classroom more often. The student learns classroom routines, has positive peer models, and is able to develop friendships with classmates. Students in my classroom who do not receive Strive services gain an awareness of their own strengths and weaknesses, patience, and empathy. My students all benefit from the diversity present in our school. I am very pleased with the expertise, flexibility, hard work, and giant hearts in the Strive program. It means so much to me that we can support children who struggle with social and emotional needs. The next one is another general ed teacher, and I'm just going to read sort of the middle. All of these quotes are amazing, so I hope you'll take some time to read them all. She just said, the staff are very respectful and supportive of our student and give him opportunities to reflect on and process his behaviors. So again, it's that self-reflection, that moving towards independence piece that is so key. And then finally, this is actually from a paraprofessional in the program, brand new to our building, brand new to any type of program like this. And I'm going to start sort of in the middle of her quote. While the program is new, the types of people that it caters to are not. Strive is allowing kids that would previously be completely separate build confidence, independence, and self-regulation skills. The improvement I have seen in my students within these first few months is better than I ever imagined, and I could not be more proud to be part of a program that has given these kids the tools they need to live a happy and successful life. So I think those nicely sandwiched with the quantitative data that the program is going well. I will acknowledge on the next slide that we certainly still have some more work to do. We're definitely not set. I think this will always be a work in progress and we'll need some growth, but in general, again, we continue to kind of support the inclusion piece and support our general ed teachers in training, et cetera. I think one thing that's really interesting and challenging at the same time is that, because students in the Strive program are included so regularly throughout the building, there are so many staff members that have contact with them. So understanding common language and expectations, has taken time to make sure that we've hit every group that might need information on how to best serve those students. And so we've been really working hard at that and a lot of different adult meetings to make sure that we have that common support. Again, we're still working on educating our building. Again, that kind of goes back to the general ed teachers, paras, et cetera. Transitions in and out of the program, that is something we are still working on. So, the entry criteria, I would say, we're a little more sure of at this point, but, one thing we haven't done yet is exit a student from the program. So that is definitely still something we have to kind of figure out going forward. And if that meant exiting back to a home school, we haven't had to do that yet. So I think that is something we are very aware of that we are trying to think through thoughtfully to make sure that the success continues. And then just, again, now that we have this program and this expertise and this programming, building some capacity in other elementary schools. So for example, if a student travels back, we want to be able to provide them with the support and the coaching to make sure that it continues to be successful. So I know the Strive staff in the building are very willing to go to other buildings and, train in programming, model, stay there for a few days, make sure the transition goes well. But that is something we haven't done yet. And so it is something that we are still working on.
Anybody have any questions?
Do the BCBAs do home visits?
Right now, no. But home consultation, yes.
Okay.
They're in constant contact with home and outside providers.
Okay.
Yep.
I just have one other quick question, and Amy, you're going to have to help me word this. So I'm assuming that the primary disability is an emotional disability.
Yes.
Yes.
Is it the only disability?
No, sometimes it can be a secondary or.
Okay.
Or,
Because I know that sometimes you may see kids, for example, in some of the schools who may have some behavioral issues, but may not necessarily be good candidates for the Strive program.
Correct. Yes.
Can you talk about a little bit about that distinction?
Yeah, so in the identification process for considering, a student for the program, prior to even maybe contacting, and bringing staff from Strive over to even be considered, is we have to look at what interventions and what things have been tried initially first, going through that continuum of services, say on the IEP in the homeschool as well. And then as well looking at ruling out, what other things could be impacting behaviors. I mean, sometimes it could be, a student struggling to adjust to school and maybe not even be identified as special education yet as well. So, and then looking to, if need be, provide some guidance from our BCBAs in the district, whether it's the Strive BCBA or our other two BCBAs, to kind of come up with some strategies and interventions to try, with those students. But yeah, I mean, I think that's an important point. We're talking about, when you looked at the buy-in presentation, talking about tier 1 and really explaining that, but really focusing on tier 2 tonight. This is really like our tier 3, really beyond our tier 2 interventions not working, and looking at needing what other levels of support a student needs to be successful. And putting that, I really, really couldn't be more pleased at how it's rolled out, and I think it's been a combination of things, the acceptance of the South Row teaching community, the teachers, right down to the elective teachers, the specialist teachers, the gen ed teachers, the way Molly's, spent the time to make sure that concerns are felt and heard and discussed, and I think they feel supported there. The staff we hired for the program, beyond happy with who we were able to get, and have them come together as such a cohesive team has been helpful. And I think that's going to serve us in supporting and strengthening things in our other elementary schools as well. I think sometimes after this year too, looking at what little things that we've put in for structures and supports for students in Strive that we could replicate or look at putting like a support in place in another school, to see if that could be an intervention for somebody without having the cohesive program. But really, we're talking about students who are identified with, a social emotional disability that is their main disability impacting them from being able to learn and be in school. And I think the part that gives me goosebumps and tears is the fact that, students all kids want to do well. They're innately want to be successful, and they want to please adults. And I think, sometimes when things don't go well and you're into that spiral pattern of students struggling, it's not great from the student's perspective either. So I think to go over and see the program and see kids in classrooms and see students smiling and saying how happy they are to be at South Row, was like the highlight of my year so far.
So Amy, are you saying then that South Row is one of the best elementary schools? With a little nod to the center in the back, and,
I love all 4 elementary schools.
Yeah, exactly, I'm sorry. Sorry.
For many different
My
reasons.
heart is at South Row.
No, always.
All of them, actually, because they all
No,
do it
but
for
I
me.
honestly, they've embraced this program, even with, we're not sure how things were gonna roll out.
Right.
And the gen ed teachers, the music,
it's
art,
key.
all of
It's huge.
jumping up to wanna
Absolutely. And
learn
then
more.
one other question for Jake. Way down the road, Molly, way down the road, don't panic. Would we ever be looking at doing any assessments for out of our district, kids?
To come back.
Well, either to come back or for other school systems who don't have this type of program, to provide them with some type of direction on how it is that they can best help their kids. I know that's way down the road.
I guess
You
if
know what I'm going.
I don't
you
want
know-
to jump in and
yeah.
speak for Dr. Lang,
Yeah.
but I was going to say, I think that would be way down the road to
Yeah,
even be at a
way.
spot
But,
to consider.
I mean, there are programs, right, who do 45-day assessments, and I'm only bringing this up as a way down the road
Right.
possibility.
And we'd have to look at capacity,
Yes, absolutely.
because our students would come first, as far
Yes.
as having space.
Don't panic, Amy, I'm just
Not
thinking way
panicking.
down the road.
I think that, I just want to applaud the amount of time and effort and really kind of care that's gone
Absolutely.
into setting up this program. It's gone very well.
Absolutely.
I think it is going to take time. I think certainly this is another layer of programming that we haven't had previously that hopefully is going to stop a certain number of students from having to go out of district.
Right.
And I think if we can help them develop
That's a
the
great
skills to
point.
stay in
Yep.
district,
Yep.
that's going to be kind of the immediate benefit.
Absolutely.
Obviously, if a child's in an out-of-district placement and we can get them to the point where they can transition back, whether they transition back to a Strive program or they just transition back to one of our own schools with the proper supports, that's looked at, all the time. I don't want to put kind of false hopes out there that, we might take in, 2 or 3 or 5 students who are already out of district and have them come back. If they've attained the skills necessary to come back, certainly, we'd rather educate them in our schools than have them in the out of placements.
Right.
But I think this is really going to have the impact of right now going forward, kind of stopping a certain
Preventing,
element,
right,
kind of
sure.
going out. The 45-day piece, assessment piece has been kind of an extra piece, because that wasn't something that we originally, I think, put a lot of emphasis on. But I think it's just the staff have really taken so well and quickly to this programming And our other, obviously with the program is housed at South Row, I think the staff just being there can help with any South Row-related cases, even if the child isn't identified for Strive yet. But we're able to kind of help our other 3 elementary schools, that if they have a struggling student, instead of having them struggle in their particular school, if we can do the assessment in district with the proper supports, that's not only helping out the student, but it's also helping out the other schools as well.
And I'm kind of glad you brought that up, because I think that one of our big ticket items in the special education budget is out-of-district placements. I mean, that's not a secret, okay?
Right.
And so I think that whatever we can do to provide programming in district that's going to allow us to provide the best possible services for these kids is just a win all the way around. It
I
really
agree.
is.
Alan?
Yeah, how many kids are involved in this program?
Right now, there's about 8.
And is it an equal number of boys and girls?
No. It's uneven.
Okay. No, I wouldn't have guessed that, but I just,
I think it's all really just depending on referrals and,
Yeah.
kind of who needs services at a particular time. And I honestly can see it kind of going
Yes.
either way, just depending on the element and the level of services that are required of the student.
John, you had something?
Yeah, Al asked the question I was going to ask, but I just wanted to say I appreciate the hard work. It's obvious how much effort you've put into the program, so hopefully more students benefit from it, the ones that need it.
Yes.
And I also want to say, as a teacher who works with this type of population, this is a total team effort. There's just no possible way that you could have achieved this kind of success without great teachers, support staff, general ed teachers, and administration, to be perfectly honest with you. So, thank you.
Thank you.
No, it's definitely had the support at South Row. And as Molly said earlier, and I don't want to forget to mention the school counselor and
Everybody.
psychologists as well have been instrumental.
Yeah.
The team piece is definitely
Huge.
been big in the success.
Kind of brings me to my question, is there something for these kids as they move on to the middle school and,
Yeah, it looks a little bit different, at each level, because we take into consideration the levels. We had, when we talked about adding this program, we had some sort of, programming and supports in place at both middle schools and at the high school level. What we didn't have was the elementary level, and that kind of had been identified through our coordinated program review, even though we kind of knew that. It may look differently as you look at age-appropriate components and supports for students as they, developmentally get older.
And I bet adding this piece also helps shape some of the direction of those programs as well.
Oh, absolutely. And it also helps a lot with the, the identification of students who really would need level of support. And that level of support going to middle school can look like, somewhat minimal support from the program to have an access and a place when they need that space or room to go to leave class, almost like that break time when they're taking a break, without it being reinforcing or, a consequence situation. And, to much more involved support as needed. And, some of the pushback questions I've asked in the past couple of years is if we're identifying students going from elementary school to middle school and saying they could benefit and really need the level of support of this type of a special educator versus the regular special educator has been, like now we know it's been students who maybe are in 4th grade or looking to transition that have been involved in the program already.
Our Strive staff also already visited the middle school program so that they could know what they were also trying to build students in 3rd and 4th grade towards. So they've taken that into consideration in terms of, I would say our middle school students look a lot more independent, as makes sense in terms of their age and, peer social interactions, et cetera. So they've actually already visited so that they could understand what kind of goal they were getting kids to. So that happened in the fall.
My last question is, now you're halfway through the year, is there anything you sit back, oh, I wish we had X, that would help us, whether it be staffing, facilities, materials? I mean, we are starting to discuss budgets and stuff like that. Is there anything you say, oh, I wish we had this that would help us?
Honestly, we're so pleased with the staffing right now, as well as the space, et cetera. I can't say that. I mean, I think a lot of this work in progress, I think we're still trying to work through. I wish I had a crystal ball so I could make sure that we could successfully staff for everybody, but I think we're at a good place now.
I think we purposefully spent that time to look at what was going to be, and Dr. Lang had said it a number of times at meetings, and even at a school committee meeting, that, you can't just throw a teacher in there and then call a program. There's needed to be thoughtful preparation and what supports were needed, and I think that was put in place and allowed to do here.
Is Strive an acronym for something?
No, that's what we love about it. That's what we love about
Striving
it.
for independence, and striving for success.
The only thing in education that's not an acronym.
Is any of the frustration, have we seen any of the frustration coming from cultural or language problems?
Not yet. Yeah,
Because I would,
not yet.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be something that we see, but that has not been an issue currently.
I would say too, I think, when you get students at this tiered level of need of support for a specialized program as such, that, those other things have been kind of teased out and tried to look at when you're looking at some issues around self-regulation or emotional support. Not that it can't be something to consider, but not typically given this
I was just
specific program.
curious, because obviously the diversity in our district increases every day.
Absolutely.
And seeing if it showed up there yet.
Can I just add one quickie? The only thing I just wanted to add to on the staffing piece is we all said this, if we noticed that we needed a program, but we all talked about the fact that if we were gonna do a program, it had to be properly staffed. And it really didn't make sense to just say, again, like, we're gonna have a program, throw a few people at it, and I think the other thing that I really do credit, not only the staff of the school, but, the school committee as well, voting to support this early in the year. Our budget cycle is such that this recommendation came forward last winter. We basically had school committee approval to start, advertising and seeking really good staff for this particular program in the late winter, early spring. And we were able to attract, a dynamic BCBA and teachers and paras for this particular program. Didn't cut any corners, and really brought some great talent into the district. And then I think the other thing that I credit them with is they all realized that they were coming together to form this program. They spent time on their own, during the summer, coming in to kind of talk about what the program was going to look like. There was a lot of work that had to go into kind of creating an identity for the program. And they certainly bought in, and it wasn't like they just came in on the first day, met each other, and started up. But there was a lot of work that went into the background. But I think had we not been able to go out and really kind of recruit and set advertising and bringing in high-quality staff earlier, we may have found ourselves in a position where some other districts struggle to, hire at the, over the summer at the very last minute. And this is a tough pool of people to try to attract to these positions. And I think we just totally benefited by the timing of everything, by your support early on in the process, and being able to go out and recruit some really talented people to the program who have bought in, and I think has also allowed the regular school staff to buy in as well.
Yes.
So that really has gone exceptionally well.
Yeah. Agreed.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Very much.
I very much
Great
appreciate
news.
it. Our third item of the evening, we're going to have Molly stay, and Jason and Diana, if you'd like to come up and join you, and I don't want to put Jason and Betsy on the spot. So one of the things we talked about a little bit is, as we're getting ready for budget season, just to go back and revisit some of our choices we made last year in the schools. One was certainly Strive, so we wanted to hear that update tonight. But we also, for the first time last year, were able to add some additional administrative supports at the elementary school. So we were able to add a half-time assistant principal at Byam and Harrington and South Row and Center School. Again, Jason and Betsy were able to come on board, and I asked the principals to be able to put together just a little memo that kind of talked about how some of that transition has worked, acclimating a new position into the building, not only the person, but, a shift in roles and responsibilities and whatnot. So I'd like to actually just turn it over to the three of you guys, and if you just talk a little bit about how this first year has kind of gone with that, and maybe just answer some questions and have a little conversation with the committee.
Just wanted to say thank you for giving us the opportunity to express our appreciation for the addition of assistant principals. I have to say this was probably the easiest task that Dr. Lang has asked us to do this year, is coming up with how this has been helpful to us. So it didn't take us any time at all to come up with a very long list of ways that it's been really beneficial to the schools, the students, and the community. and allowing us to meet the district strategic plans as well. So one of the first areas is instructional leadership and evaluation. We were able to take some of the people that we were evaluating, and the assistant principals are evaluating them as well, which is huge. When you go from like 22 people that you're evaluating to 17, you can spend a lot more time with discussions with staff about teaching and learning. So that's been wonderful. Just to give you an example, yesterday I was in doing an observation, and Mr. Romala was in the building as well, and so I just gave him a promotion. So I was doing an observation, and typically I'd probably go in for 30, 40 minutes for the observation, but I knew he was in the building and things were being handled, and I was able to stay for an hour and 15 minutes. And the teacher was thrilled that I was actually able to see the entire lesson, see how she wrapped it up at the end of the day, their closing routines, and she mentioned that today and how appreciative she was, and that certainly would not probably have been possible without an assistant principal in the building, so that's been wonderful. We've been able to do more frequent walkthroughs together, and it's helpful to kind of toss your ideas of what you're seeing and have discussions about teaching and learning with someone else as well, so that's been incredibly helpful.
And they picked which section I was gonna, but I probably would have selected this one when I was to share about. But one of the things that I think when we interviewed, and we were interviewing, as two buildings and coming to agreement on one person for the two buildings. I think one of the things that we were all looking for was individuals that could support the social emotional needs of our students. And I think not just by having assistant principals, but also the selection of those people, both Jason and Diana came with that background and that understanding of what we wanted to do with PBIS, and they have both been really integral parts of the implementation of those processes at our building. Both of them sit on various teams that work on these, whether it's Tier 1 team or Tier 2 team, school climate teams. They're able to support staff. I think that is, a key part when they have that opportunity to have someone that is certainly well-versed in all these areas and can support staff with strategies and throughout kind of the rollout of the process. Also supporting students quite specifically, too. Think of those days when you'd have, the line out your door and next, like a deli counter and trying to, you think of those doctors trying to rush through. You don't want to rush through any interaction of corrective action or anything you're doing with the student too. And having another individual there who carries that administrative weight, but also sees philosophically with us, I think, and that's important, that believes in how we're, it's not all about the discipline of it, where you can hear we're doing a lot of the teaching, and it takes time if you're not just saying, okay, yep, you see me next recess, right? It's the time to reflect on what's happened and how we do better going forward, and they are both a huge piece of that too, in the social emotional supports of our students, but I think also the staff and the implementations of systems. Having an administrative team certainly allows greater access to that system spreading kind of with one voice, and I think that's been really important for us as well.
In terms of family communication, obviously at the elementary level, this is really important for families to feel like they can communicate and know what's happening in the school. I think we would probably say all 4 elementaries have done a nice job communicating with families previously, but it's just sort of been enhanced. There's more time to update websites, tweet. I am now tweeting, social media, et cetera, more ways of getting in touch with families, but also just that families know that there's more than one person they can reach out to. I think sometimes families may perceive, and we are very busy, but there is somebody that they want to reach out to at the school, and I think that they feel like they can do that, so that family connection is even stronger at the elementary level as a result.
Another task that they're assisting with is monitoring attendance of students. This year, as you know, attendance is a determining factor in MCAS, so it's really important for us to follow up with families and ensure that kids are coming to school on a regular basis. So the addition of assistant principals has really helped to do more outreach with parents and kind of find out if there is an issue with students coming, what we can do to support them to improve attendance. So that's been very helpful.
Also from a facility standpoint, you're really managing a facility as well, and a large physical plant at times. And, oftentimes there'd be various workers coming in, and there's things that are happening, and you rely a bit on your custodians as well, but also to have an administrator that knows the ins and outs of the building, can tour with people, can also monitor things, right? It's hard to cast a net over everything and notice kind of deficiencies in the building on a regular basis, and having another set of eyes, having someone, just as we had a safety audit come through, we were able to have assistant principals join on that and add insight too. So managing the physical plant certainly is a strong case too, to have assistant principals where those people are, have keys to everywhere, have knowledge of things as they learn it too. Really important to have that piece, I think, in a building as well.
Just the support of all the programs. To be perfectly honest, to start up a brand new program this year was a lot of work. Totally worth it, but it was also very nice to know that staff had somebody else they could go to about other things. So there's different programs at every building. Everybody has learning centers and resource rooms, but there's also the ASD program, now the Strive program, the functional program. So to know that there's more support for that, as well as just annual review meetings for special education, 504 meetings. We also tend to be part of those. So it's nice to have either somebody else that is running the building at the same time, or a second set of people that can be in that, and so that parents really feel supported by administration and not just special education. So.
And as you know, we've been rolling out Alice this year, which has been a huge initiative and undertaking, and it's been very helpful having assistant principals in the building with those drills and rollout as well. And also just on a daily basis, if we're out of the building, it's nice to have someone else there as well. So those are just a few of the things, and I'm sure we could come up with many, many, many more.
I think like when you think about a crisis, right, which we hate to as we're rolling through all these drills, every that time you're like, I literally would be worrying about dreams about the crisis when I'm not there, and while there's people that are trained in certain levels, having that administrative presence there, and also working as an incident management team with another administrator, I think is hugely important as we look at kind of the broader safety and wellness of our buildings. I'm sorry, but Dana, I just interrupted. No. You would have closed.
All right, any questions, John?
No questions, but I think we would be remiss if we didn't say that all of these things have been done by really high-quality individuals. I think you've been a terrific addition, not just in terms of the responsibilities and the roles that you fulfill in the schools, but just by virtue of the people that you are, the professionals that you are. I've heard great things about both of you from parents and administrators and teachers. So I think we would be, as I said, remiss if we didn't mention that it's not just this role, but really the great people that we have on board with us now.
Agreed.
John?
That was way more eloquent than I would be, but I just wanted to thank you for coming on board and all the work you put in. Very good.
Is there a noticeable difference when the days are not there? Do you wake up in the morning and go, oh, no, this is no assistant principal day, or,
Yes.
Yes.
I would assume so. I must, it's Tuesday, darn, I don't
And we try to plan things accordingly. So,
Yeah.
right. Your larger activities and things like that, your drills, your certain things, you want that person. Yep, in the building. And I think we've all been flexible. When there's been things, we've been flexible. We've tried to keep schedules as best they can, alternating days and during different days. But certainly, there's times that arise, and we share because we care.
Do you guys have a tie-breaking procedure if you both equally need to?
Rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, rock, paper, scissors.
So Principal Aslan and I arm wrestle, and I'll just let you guess who wins that.
Yeah.
Well, he really wins that much, huh?
Mhm.
Yeah, so,
Al, do you have anything?
No, I think it's really important having people work with me, and it's great. Just feel there's a confidence there that you don't
It's a great.
have if
That's a
you're
great
all
way to.
alone.
Yep, that's a great. Confidence is a great. That's a great. We probably didn't articulate that, but I think that's a very accurate representation of how I feel. Tuesday, Wednesday, and every other Friday.
Most important thing, what is the feedback from the kids?
Well, I think part of it was like, how do you drop these people in here with a very important job, new to the families, new to staff, and new to the kids,
Yeah.
and make them kind of a regular part. And I think we've tried to do that in 3 different parts. But I think the kids now, Mrs. Dolan has her check-ins that come to her regularly, and kids that she builds that relationship that I might not be able to have. And I think it's the same with staff. I think it was cautious at first to say, how do you approach this person? And, as Donna hit on, it doesn't take long to talk with these two and understand, what they believe in, and that it's for the best of the school, the kids, the staff. And I think same thing. I think families probably they're the farthest removed, right? So as much as they push out things, the more they deal with families and they understand the professionalism and care that they give to, I think it's been across the board. Yeah.
Yeah, the kids love it. I mean, just greeting in the morning, hey, Mr. Romalo, the grade level meetings that we're doing together versus just one person kind of organizing them. They absolutely love another face in the office that they can talk to. So,
As we look at this benefit list, I mean, it's certainly extensive, but I think you could blow this out even more. I mean, this is really just scratches the surface in so many ways. I
Yes.
mean, very important, but it's just so much more that you can't really appreciate unless you're living it day in and day out.
yes.
Yeah, I have to say too, I mean, Betsy and Jason both kind of seamlessly, I think, entered the district. And we spent a little time talking this summer too. This is a change, right? So like, our principals haven't had an assistant to fall back on in the past. So that was gonna take some change in their scheduling. Again, I think 2 great people, but personalities even just to integrate it to the schools. It's gone, very, very well. So I couldn't be happier with it. And, so I thank you guys and obviously Jason and Betsy for your work and coming on board.
I hope you took notes for your review.
The tape, it's all
It's
tape.
on tape, it's on tape. So,
Thank you.
Thank
All
you
right,
for
thank you
having us.
very much. Have a great night.
You too.
All right, our 4th item this evening, Dennis, is yours. It's the follow-up for the agenda. Good night, girls. Follow-up for the agenda for the public forum at the end of January. You just have a draft agenda, and if it looks good, we'll end up advertising that. We'll spend the next couple weeks kind of pushing that out. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. Yeah, I know at our last meeting, Donna and Barbara had come up with some agenda items, so we could kind of put them together. I tried to put a little bit introduction so that people understood what this was about, what the public forum was about. So I used my high-tech, graphic skills to come up with a very
That's a very good clip
Yeah,
art. I
yeah,
haven't
it's a
seen
very
that
good clip
in a
art,
while.
But, if people are okay, if everybody's okay with this format, I think it'd be good to start advertising now.
Yep.
Yes,
So that we can get, start to get things going. I know Donna's gonna work with Dr. Hirsch in terms of coming up with sort of a presentation for the night and putting all that together, so I'm sure if anybody has any suggestions, we can reach out to Donna or to myself or to Dr. Hirsch and, kind of get everything organized for that night, so. So, is everybody okay with this particular format?
No, I think this looks great, and thank you for the work. It's-
Yeah, I think it's really good that you've separated the things out, because it would be easy without that division to jump all over the place.
Yeah.
So I think it's good.
All right,
Great.
We'll get it posted.
Are we doing the police station again? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
The training room when you walk in right and left.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, next is, we have the final draft of the school committee handbook that we've been working on for the last couple meetings. So I thank Lang, Dr. Hirsch for, working on the grammar and the spell check and, putting a nice cover on it, so.
Yep.
If
Came out
everybody is happy with the
Yeah,
way
it
it
looks
is,
fantastic.
then, I think we should probably take a vote of approval tonight, and then we can get it posted on the website, on the school committee page, and, I think Barbara did have a good idea, then that, anybody that's interested in what school committee is about, whether they're looking to run school committee, or they just wanna know what their school committee members do, I think that's a good resource to have, and I think it's a good resource for us too, sometimes to kinda go back and look at and say, okay, what are my roles and responsibilities, and, how should I be acting on the committee, so, if we're okay with that, then we'll take a vote, any comments beforehand, or?
No, it looks fantastic.
No, again, thank you for the work. This is, I think it'll be good for people coming in.
Yeah. And this clip op's almost as good as mine, but not quite.
Ooh, the good thing Linda's not here to hear that. She likes hers.
So,
I move that we adopt the new school committee handbook.
Second.
Any discussion, any questions? All in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? 4-0. Great.
I'll get that up on the website in the morning. Excuse me, item number 6 this evening, just follow up to keep you in the loop. We had talked about this previously, but I just wanted you to have all the information in front of you. The school committee, the town capital committee did meet at the end of November to take a look at all of our different projects. And the first 4 projects, the school security upgrade, the school kitchen code compliance upgrade, the school parking lot at the Harrington, and then the school kitchen upgrade, were approved and recommended to move forward to town meeting in the spring. So those 4 projects totaled just a little bit over $1 million. The last 4 of our priorities, the school clocks, the ductwork, the parking at the high school, and then the flooring repair, were deferred. They were not recommended to move forward. Those projects totaled $726. So again, just wanted to share that information with you, kind of keep you in the loop. What I'll recommend we do is, after this all goes forward to town capital in April, assuming the 4 projects that are recommended get approved, I'll come back to you, obviously let you know that, but then the 4 that didn't, we'll need to factor into, because they still need to be done. So we'll have to put them back into the capital plan for years, 2 through 5, take at them, look at them priority-wise and everything, just to not have them fall off the radar and kind of forget about them.
I think that's reasonable. I really like these. I really do. And I think they're reasonable. And I think they fit in well to the overall, picture of the town in terms of what, other departments need. I think it's fantastic, yeah.
Yep, no, I think they're good, but I just wanted to convey that. I know sometimes people will hear us talk at the meetings, but just to actually have it and kind of have it posted out there, just so that we're all on the same page about what's going forward and particularly when it comes town meeting wise.
So this will be voted on at town meeting?
Yeah, this goes as part of the, that night of the budget.
Yep.
I think it's that third Monday in April or whatnot,
Yep.
when we start doing budget deliberations for next year. Item number 7 is just for your information, just the personnel report from the month of November. Again, this just details, we don't have as much activity, obviously, during the school year as we did during the summer, but just new hires, resignations, retirements. We didn't have any assignment changes, but just to give you the flavor of what's happening personnel-wise in the district.
Now, I noticed there was a music teacher at Harrington.
There was a what?
A music teacher at Harrington? Music teacher at Harrington. We're replacing somebody, or was it? Okay.
We did, with the music teacher at Harrington had resigned.
Okay.
I believe in October.
Okay.
So she probably appeared on the October report, and then she was replaced with this individual for the rest of the school year. So she's a long-term sub for the rest of the year. Item 8 is something we had done last year, and just for continuity's sake, I wanted to do again. Just list for public input a specific item on the agenda, so that anyone from the community come forward and talk about any issues that they wanted to kind of flag or talk about or have input about, particularly pertaining to the FY20 budget. So even though we have, I mentioned, public participation at the beginning of the meeting and the end of the meeting, just to be really clear that if anyone has any items that they'd like to talk about, they can certainly feel welcome to. If they can't attend the meeting, if they want to send an email, we can read the email. But we'll do this again at the next meeting on the 22nd as well.
Does anybody want to speak? Yep, come on.
No.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Just, if you could just state your name and. Any address to?
This was my reason for not continuing to watch our
Okay,
home
so
tonight.
just-
My name is Maria Santos, and I live at 19 Parkhurst Road. What I wanted to give a little input on this is, I really urge you as a school committee and in the budget to consider putting in a social worker and giving some attention and money and whatever you need to do, maybe in conjunction with the town, to bring a social worker into the school system. Now, why am I saying this at this time? That fabulous appointment that Mrs. Rogers gave me, which is I'm enjoying tremendously, as ELL coordinator to try to get this parent group together. What I'm finding is that you have an incredible bunch of teachers who are teaching these ELL students and doing everything possible for them, but they're being asked to do so much of what a social worker would be doing. And I think it gets to the point and to the level where it's just not appropriate. They get to know too much, in a way, about the family and about what's happening. I always remember, we keep very quiet and very private about school lunches and who can afford them and who can't afford them. Well, when you are dealing with a social worker, it's those issues and so much more. And it's just not okay to go in to see a teacher and say, can you sit here and fill out all these forms for me because I just can't do it? Or, I need to go to this place, but I really don't know how to get there or what they can do for me. And unfortunately, or fortunately, that's not the job of that person, so they don't really know all the resources that are available to the families. So I think it would be extremely important to really consider. I believe that you now have some hours of a social worker in your CHIPS program, and maybe even on a per diem basis, getting a social worker even this year, if it's possible, to give some hours to the ELL and to the general population. There are probably quite a few families who would benefit from this. I remember many times, especially in the elementary level, as PTO members, that we were asked to contribute when families couldn't do certain things or achieve certain things, but very difficult to come to us as fellow parents and ask for those kinds of things. So it would be immensely important. Everybody needs it at some point in life. You never know when it's going to be. And if you're transitioning into an entire new place, including an entire new language, a new way of learning, it's that important to have that kind of support. And so that's my 2 cents worth on the social worker. My other thing, of course, is technology. I really want that going. And as I do more and more with ELL, I realize how technology can actually help immensely in many different ways, not only with special ed, but also with ELL. Finally, my other thought here was, and I don't know if I can say it at this time because I don't think it has much to do with budget. So do you want me to reserve it for the end, for general comments?
Might be safer.
Yeah, probably.
Okay,
Do you mind?
got it. Thank you.
Yeah, it might be safer.
Can I ask for
Thank
some
you.
clarification on the social worker?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maria,
Maria?
Donna was want to ask a question.
So are you looking for one social worker for the ELL program, or, okay, like, what did you have in mind?
I think personally that you probably do not need a social worker fully devoted to the ELL program. You've got 180-something, close to 200 students at this point. I think that program is growing, though, as you go into the next year. So, it's important to look at those numbers. But throughout the entire system, you've got needs. The town very likely has needs. I know that in many school systems, what they do is they have the social worker come to the school for a certain amount of time and give access to parents who need the social worker's input for certain hours of the day. But I would say at least a half-time person who could come in and provide some much-needed assistance.
Thank you.
Okay,
Very much.
that's my thought. And I know for teachers, this is difficult for them to tell you this, because, you know what, they don't want to say no to these families. I have not seen a more deeply committed group. This is, and I think the reason is because these people really want to learn. These are students who are committed to learning. And so the teachers feel a great need to give them the resources that they need as much as they can. And so they don't want to say no or come to you and say, I don't want to do. It's not their job, though. It really should not be their place to be doing this. And then the language need comes in, too. So even a social worker who may not have a second language or a third language, I think there's 50-something languages in the system, it is going to also need translators. And so part of what I want to do, and Kelly and I have been working on this, Mrs. Rogers and I, is we want to start getting a list together of people in the community who may want to be available for translation, and then there'd have to be consent back and forth on that. But, we're going to come to that point. We're working on it, and we're going to come to that point. but the social worker part, it's just too difficult for a teacher to figure out the resources needed in a few minutes. And a person who's a social worker will have it right at their fingertips.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Can I ask a question, just a follow-up question to you, Jay? We have guidance counselors at the elementary and middle school levels?
We do. We have, we call them school counselors, but they're,
school counselors.
guidance counselor type individuals. Each elementary school has a full-time.
Right.
McCarthy actually has 3 school guidance counselors. Parker has 2. And then at the high school, each of the house offices has 2.
So I'm actually more concerned about the elementary and middle school.
Okay.
Because I'm trying to figure out, what would the differentiation be for a guidance counselor versus a social worker?
That's something we've been struggling with, quite honestly. The need is certainly there for additional social supports.
Right.
And one of the things that Lorraine, who just came on board as our new coordinator for social emotional learning and counseling services, these type positions would fall under her. But we, as a district, need to kind of look and be very clear about, what is the role of the school counselor? What is the role of the school psychologist? Because we added the full-time psychologist also
Right.
at the elementary level. This is their second year at this point. And then a social worker would oftentimes fulfill some kind of a joint or intermediary role between a school counselor and a psychologist and whatnot. So we just need to have some clarity around exactly what the role would look like. So we don't have interference or have overlap between our existing 2 roles and something like that.
Right.
So that is something that we are going to be looking at with Lorraine now that she's on board.
Okay.
And we really need to make kind of a district recommendation for how we would implement something like that. So
Okay.
again, so we're just being sensitive to all of those issues.
Okay. Do you have any idea when we might make a district recommendation?
I mean, it's all budget related, so, Lorraine has only come on board, so I don't want to.
Sure. No,
She's still
absolutely.
getting
Yeah.
acclimated, but it's something that's been on our radar for a little bit now.
Okay.
So we are working on it. This, we've started, but through the winter and spring.
Because I think this has been a concern for the committee for quite some time.
Right.
The whole idea of introducing
Well-
social workers. But I think we do need to have some clarification about,
Right.
the role.
Well, and I think 2 years back, when we were talking about, and I want to validate the need. I mean, the need for the supports are there. When we're talking about, how best, particularly at the elementary level, to provide those extra supports, at the time, we decided to go with moving from a half-time to a full-time psychologist model. And then also, again, as another layer of providing supports to implement this current year, the half-time assistant principal. Oftentimes, they're providing some of those social service or traditional kind of social worker type activities. So it's not that we haven't implemented or providing any additional layers of support. We actually are. I think just the social worker position by title isn't something that we've had before, and we just need to really be clear about how it would integrate in. And again, then you talk about need. Is it a need of, 1 per school? Is it more programmatic? Is it, an individual who covers, multiple schools? Or you get into, say, a person who's dedicated to, say, more ELL programming or some of our high needs students. That all has to be kind of worked out. But I can assure you that it's on our radar, and it's a front burner as opposed to a back burner issue at this point.
Would we be ready in the budget to make a recommendation, or we need? Do you know what I'm saying? Because, I don't want to wait another year.
No, I hear you. I think I don't want to overcommit right now, just
Okay.
because we're still deep in kind of budget discussions and what's going to happen with that.
Okay.
I think the interesting thing about adding any kind of additional social supports as opposed to teaching supports really have to be in place day 1 in September. And you've got to do that lead time to get ready. We could add social supports now. We could add them, in October. There's not that hard date where they have to start as far as having continuity
Right.
of the individual. It's more, when can you actually go out and attract good people into that role? But I think in fairness to them as well, we'd want to be very clear about what the expectations around their role are, so that when they were coming on board, they were really effective. And they weren't trying to muddle through and kind of figure out what their role is at the same time we are.
So I'm just thinking from a budget perspective, though. Will this be something that we need to think about building into the budget, whether, okay.
Yeah, we certainly can consider it in this coming budget, and I think the other thing that we just need to look at is we obviously have a local budget that we have to lock into, but but we also have some grant funding that we need to look into. We just need to figure out, what would be the best source of that. And again, sometimes if it is more of a programmatic type need, you might have targeted assistance towards, say, like an ELL population, where you might be able to get some targeted money to particularly help that population. If it's more generic, then that would be something in the local budget.
So I think Dennis and I spent some time with Representative Golden, I think it was last spring, and we talked about, the fact that social workers are needed in schools now, and that I think we do need to continue to push our reps towards making funds available, for this kind of thing,
Right.
whether it be so that we can bring them on, and then gradually assume the responsibility, financially
Right.
for them. But, I think that the state has identified that there's a lot of issues out there that kids are struggling with. And I think we need to, like I said, we really need to push them on this. They need to step it up. The opioid crisis alone,
Right.
okay? I mean, there's a lot of money that's been allocated for that. I'd like to see some of that used for social workers as a preventative type of strategy, but, I don't know. I think it's time for a meeting again.
It's hard to nail them down, I know.
I
We've
know.
tried a couple times
Yeah.
now, so it's just tough.
But it's on our agenda.
Okay.
Is this a good point? Any other input on the budget from any other members here?
What are we going to do about the recent legislation around the assessments for dyslexia at the kindergarten level?
I wish Linda were here this evening and could talk about that. She actually had a meeting last Friday before she left with special education, and Kelly Rogers was there as well. I honestly don't know what the outcome of that meeting was.
Okay.
Can I ask her, and we'll do a presentation at the
Absolutely.
next meeting, we'll do a little update for you?
Yeah, I just know that this is something that's, now that we have to assume some responsibility for, and I'm assuming we have to have a place in the budget for that. And it is one of our goals.
We do, no, it's certainly necessary. I think, and I don't want to say too much,
No,
but
I
I do
understand.
know that particularly next year, we have to implement some additional screenings and supports for kindergarten students. So they're trying to take a look at possibly just integrating into the whole case screening
Okay.
process, but I don't want to get too far ahead. I will ask Linda to provide a little update next meeting for you.
So this will be an agenda item?
I'll ask her to put,
Yeah, okay.
just do a memo with like a little update as to where we are.
Yeah, and as I
and
said,
what we're
this is
thinking.
more
But
related to the budget.
But the
and making
dollar
sure-
amount or the budget?
Yes.
That would be in the budget.
Okay,
When that comes out, but that budget's not till the next meeting.
okay.
All right, I just had a couple things in terms of budget, and we've talked about it. I don't know if this, in terms of activity fees and perhaps waiving the fees for community service-based organizations like the Student Council, that type of thing. I think this would be a good time to start really think about what groups this would involve and how much money that would involve and how it's gonna impact the budget and that type of thing.
Yeah,
Okay, so,
that's on my radar.
I think we had a rough draft of that, correct? Where it was the yellow and the green?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Right,
so,
yeah.
maybe we need to revisit that.
yeah. Something else, and I'll give Superintendent Lang all the credit for this one, but looking at parking fees at the high school as compared to bus passes, people taking a bus are using a service, and people parking in the parking lot are parking on in a pavement. I know there needs to be some sort of a fee.
Beautiful pavement.
Yeah, beautiful pavement now, but some sort of fee associated, because there is some upkeep in that, but I don't know if that's something we can look at in terms of, I know you had mentioned it before.
Yeah, I'm looking at that just in relation to, so I can tell you kind of a couple things we have out there. Just geographically in our area, kind of the greater Merrimack Valley area, we're just doing a quick survey of all fees that people are assessed by community. So we're taking a look at like athletic fees. I don't think we really have to get into like milk and lunch type fees for that, because that's kind of a little bit different from community, but athletic fees, user fees, clubs and activities, busing, say parking fees, things along those lines. So we'll be looking at that as part of the budget process.
I took a look at that for the tri-board, because I know that was one of Paul's questions in his presentation, and it's all over the place.
Yeah.
It really
I mean,
is. No, it is,
districts,
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. I would say that at this point, it looks like Chelmsford kind of falls in the middle. I think we should definitely take a look at it, but, I mean, it really varies wildly from town to town, just right around us.
It's not gonna hurt even, I know, I agree with you, but it's not gonna hurt to even just let our public know
Absolutely.
that we're not that far off base, or, if we are low or we're high. But we're soliciting that information right now. So
Yeah.
that'll be information coming forward.
And another thing that we've mentioned, and this was, we mentioned the last time we did the budget, is just including some of those fees in the budget as offsets, like the
Right.
athletic fee, for example.
Right.
You know, beforehand, before this year, at least, it's been kind of a back page item versus something within the budget as an offset, so people can see how much athletics cost us, you know, so you see what, you know, what's in the budget, but then there's also the number at the back of the budget that comes from the fees, so, you know, people can see this.
Yeah, historically, there's been that one page at the back of the budget, the revolving fund page, so that's always still gonna be there, because that's gonna track your revolving fund balance. But we're gonna try to implement, or include, like we do, some offsets to the budget, to some of those other areas, just to show we're really actually spending more for, say, athletics.
Right, exactly,
Or
that's
more
what I
for
mean,
student
you know.
activities, and showing that offset there.
Right, the athletics is, you know, 300,000 more than what's in there, whatever the number is, we're actually, that's.
We're showing basically the net number
Yeah.
in the budget, and then behind the scenes in the revolving fund,
Right.
making up the revenue, so.
Same with the clubs. There's only like 3 or 4 clubs listed in the budget. I don't even
Right.
know why they're there.
Well, but
Yeah,
the-
we still haven't figured out
Yeah,
that.
I honestly don't know, we just inherited that, but
Okay.
those 3 or 4 clubs are still there. But in addition to that, there are line items for like middle school and high school
Yes.
clubs. Those offset
Okay.
some of the other fees.
Yeah.
But
Is there a
we're
reason why it's
working on
just,
that.
we don't know why it's just those 3 or 4? Should we put them all? Or?
I have absolutely no idea. So I think this first year, if we actually do some offsets to clubs, I think we should list them, just so that we're crystal clear about which ones we're kind of exempting, which ones we're not. And then going forward after that, we could figure out a way to consolidate if we want to. But I think if not in the budget itself, we should have some kind of a little appendix that at least shows like which clubs are adding up to,
Right.
you know, that amount of money for the line item.
The other thing too is last year, I think when we met with the Council of Schools, one of the things that we had talked about, and I'm not really sure how to do this, but, you know, I was at the South Row PTO meeting last night, and they do a tremendous amount of enrichment, as all the elementary and middle schools do. But they raise about, well, they currently have about, I think it was $20,000, or maybe a little bit more, that they have raised that provides these programmings. And I don't think people understand how much time and effort and money is raised to provide enrichment, resources, and a lot of other things to the schools that are beyond what it is that we provide in the
Right.
budget. And those funds are largely probably generated by parents and extended families, you know, of kids going to those schools. And like I said, I don't know how to put that in there, but, you know, or if even it was just I don't know, a report from the council.
So, yeah, we were talking
you
about
know.
maybe having council schools
Yeah,
come and
Right.
to
but
present a meeting.
it's
you know.
such a huge benefit, and it's such a tremendous amount of effort and, you know, finances that these PTOs put forward. I feel like it's been overlooked. I know we mention it, but I really think that in general, especially at
The
town
support's-
meeting,
yeah, the
that people
support's
need
been
to
great.
see.
I don't know, we can't really put that into our local operating
Right.
budget book, but where we have the appendices section that has like different information, like we have student enrollment and all these different things. I think by the time we actually go to produce the book that will go to town meeting in April, we'll have time to ask each of the PTOs, if they'd like to, because it's a voluntary thing, but ask each of the PTOs to provide us like a 1 or 2 pager. We'll give them the template to follow, so it all kind of looks uniform, to just talk about the contributions that the PTO makes at their school level, and we can just include it as an appendix in the
Right.
budget book.
Yes, okay.
The money won't be factored in, but it can help kind of tell the story about how the PTOs are contributing to the schools.
And the parents.
Well, the parents,
Yeah, well, and so I guess what I mean by that, above and beyond, I know that, because, you know, we talk a lot about that, you know, schools are a big ticket item, you know, and the taxpayers get worried, and rightly so, about how their taxes are going up. But I really want them to see that, for, you know, maybe for people who don't have kids in the schools, that parents contribute a lot financially beyond just
a
their
ton, yeah.
taxes, right, you know?
I was just saying, it just,
Yeah.
it goes from the parents to the PTO,
Right.
and then the PTO expends it.
Right.
But, yeah, we can do that.
One other thing for me, you know, and this is, you'll like this one, I'm sure, is if we could, you know, somehow get some money in the budget to do something about our website, you know. It needs, you know, what we do with it, I'm not sure. It does need some work, as we discussed.
It does.
So, just my 2 cents as far as that's
Second that,
concerned.
yeah.
Third.
Yeah. Needs some modernization.
Yeah, you know, whether it's a revamp or a redo, or just somebody's gotta go through it and just pull out all the old stuff, and, you know, so all the information that they need is readily available, and there's no information in there that shouldn't be in there. that type of
Yeah, I want to
thing.
be a resource, not just a function.
Yeah,
Right.
you
yeah.
know, so.
I'll say it's a lot of clicks to find things. I mean, any of the town websites are, but, I mean, we don't have to follow that.
My last thing is just, foresee any enrollment issues, especially with, you know, any new buildings, things going up. I know, you know, one of the, we had, Center School was a little high this year, we have a project
Yeah.
at the end of Mill Road, are we worried about that, are we thinking about alternatives if?
The only thing that we're looking at originally, I don't have any major concerns with our current K through 12 numbers. At the high school, I really don't have any concern. I mean, their numbers are fine. Middle school, the current fifth grade middle school is our biggest number of middle school kids coming for a couple of years. And I just did the class size report at the last meeting. I think at McCarthy, our average class size for our core classes was 25. I want to say Parker was 22, 23, so we're under that 25 limit. So I really don't have any concerns there for the next couple of years moving in. At the elementary level, the wild card is always going to be the kindergarten, because they're not our students yet, so they're enrolling. So we're going to be advertising and having our enrollment for kindergarten at the end of January. We might get a little indication then, April or May, when they do the second round, we get some more. But again, the numbers really that caught us off guard this year at Center picked up over the summer. So it was late enrollments to the school, and there's not a heck of a lot you can do about that once you've kind of locked into a plan to program. So I do think we took preventative steps to we added some additional paraprofessional support in the classrooms. We're gonna take a look at all of our existing classrooms to figure out, you know, the number of core classes that we're offering appropriate. Do we need to add a section here or there? I know Byam actually has 5 sections of 4, so they have a teacher kind of rotating off. Do we need to keep that teacher, you know, at Byam, or do we need to float that position to one of the other schools? So we're looking at that, but I'm not anticipating any huge issues.
Okay.
From a rezoning perspective, the only 2 things that we're looking at, and I don't think we have to take immediate action now, but when you look at Parker and McCarthy are both basically becoming 8-strand schools. So they're both going to have a similar setup as far as 8 teachers at each grade level in the core program. We still have that little section of, and I'm going to say the wrong school, I think there's a little section of Byam that feeds McCarthy instead of Parker. So 2 of our schools automatically all go to Parker, and then 2 go to McCarthy, but there's a little section that's still going from Byam is going to McCarthy instead of Parker. I think that's something that we could look at, because we know where those kids live now. That's something that I actually see, you know, wouldn't be a hard commit, like we wouldn't have to hard cut kids over, but it could be more of a choice type thing if we wanted to, because we already have the buses going in the neighborhood. That might be something we do more of a choice type option, just to divert a few more kids from McCarthy over to Parker, because they have a little bit more capacity. And then the nice thing about that is we could potentially, in the long run, have very clean 2 schools feeding one middle school, 2 schools feeding another, just so that there's real continuity in scheduling. So that is something I'm looking at. Aside from that, the only other secondary issue we're looking at is, again, you have a couple housing developments. I'm not as concerned about Byam right now. It is more Center. We wouldn't look at a total rezone, because that's just too complicated and affects too many people. But particularly that development down at the end of Mill Road, that's currently feeding Center, that, and there's another one, I think another phase that's gonna be coming on board. We might wanna actually just zone those developments to South Row.
Right.
So it's much easier, you know, before kids really get enrolled in a school. They don't have an association with Center right now, and they're actually closer geographically to South Row. And South Row has capacity, and we have South Row buses that go down Mill Road to get to South Row. So we could pretty easily just kind of annex almost that development, and even though it's in the Center District, have that just feed South Row. So those 2 things I'm looking at.
Yep.
But they're not gonna be really impactful for our parents, because those kids aren't in our schools now anyway, or they're not at Center. So it's not like we're taking a child from one school and moving them to another. And if we did the middle school thing with Byam possibly going to Parker, that little neighborhood, I do think we can get away with it doing a voluntary type thing for a few years and leave it more of an option. So those are the only two enrollment issues that I'm working on.
Well, there's also that, I don't know if you're referring to it, but there's a new one that's part of that 129 plan that's housing essentially for the business people that they're looking to bring in there, and it's big. I think it's like 160 units or something.
Where's this one, Turnpike?
No, it's new. It's part of, it's in the early stages, but I think it's been approved.
I think I know which one you're talking about, but I don't think they've broken ground yet.
No, they haven't.
Oh.
I'm just saying that,
Okay.
I mean, if it is in that range, and I may be off, but I think it's in that 150, 160 unit range. And it won't hit again, even when it's up, it won't hit the first year or so, but it will right after.
No, I know it's coming along.
Huge.
It's the housing one at the end of Mill Road now.
Yeah, I know that.
That's starting to hit us because we've got kids
Yeah.
starting to enroll.
Right. If we could go back, just one other thing that I want, when we were discussing, it's a minor point financially, but with regard to the clubs at the high school, I think there needs to be a process for approving them, because when we have the students of the month come, there are new clubs every time, and it's a problem, because I think they're trying to pay for everything for liability issues. I think they're trying to pay for all, for these things. But I hate to bring this out, but some kids propose clubs so that they can say they started a club at the high school. It looks good on their resume. And we've got clubs that, the fourth club, it's this community service, Key Club, Thomas Jefferson Forum. I think it needs to be a review of the purpose of the club, and how many people are interested in those kinds of things, because I think if you talk to Lauren and Cochran and the other people that are involved, it's a nightmare. I mean, and as a principal, just making that decision, the example I always use is dance team. That came out of nowhere. It's like 3 girls came up and said, "Can we have a dance team?" I said, "Sure." But now it's an integral part of all of the dramatic presentations and everything, and they have their own recital and everything else. So the principal's under pressure, if you want to put it that way, to approve things, to give it a shot. So just when you're having discussions, because it's going to be part of the financial discussion, I think it would be a good idea to have a procedure for proposing and have maybe a committee of faculty and administration to look at it or something, to kind of standardize it and get it under control.
Okay.
So both proposing and reviewing, I think, right? Reviewing it as well, to find out what the enrollment is.
Yeah, well, part of it, Lauren's asking for a mid-year update on all the clubs now, and they are trying to keep a better track on things, but I'm not exaggerating. Like the kids that came from the, the 6 kids from the students of the month, there must have been 6 new clubs I never even heard of before. I'm involved with that stuff.
Right. I think the core clubs that are part of the stipended club list are pretty recurring. So those are your ones. I think what happens oftentimes is kids will come up with an idea of a club, and they end up kind of unofficially, like, they find a faculty advisor to help pilot the club. And the thought is, you give it a year to see if it's going to get any legs, if it's going to get the support and the interest. And then if it does, hopefully you factor that in. But I think that process could be tightened up. And the other thing is this, you can't totally dilute the pool too much. As much as you want to try to help and say yes to as many people as you can, if the interest is there, you can't, if you have a core group of 100 kids, you can't, spread them into 20 clubs and have it be really substantive and get anything out of it. So that is something that we can look at.
I think, procedure just would clean the whole thing up too.
Okay. Any other budget ideas, thoughts? So we're gonna do this again next week.
The
So
22nd.
anybody that's watching at home that would like to come in next week and has anything they want to.
And even though, they certainly can do that in 22nd.
Next meeting soon,
In February, when we, start talking about the budget, we talk about that for a number of meetings. And then, we can continue talking even through, March or April, and even after town meeting approves the budget. that doesn't end at that point. So the budget's still kind of a living document. If you want to make tweaks or amendments as we go, you certainly can do that just within our amount. So it's good conversation to have.
All right, field trips, I believe is next.
Yeah, I think we just have one field trip request this evening to approve. Hang on one second, I'm just trying to.
I move that we approve the 10th grade English class trip to see all my sons in New York City on April 24th.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? So this is 10th grade,
Yeah.
all the 10th grade classes? So how many kids?
Certain 10th grade English classes.
Do we know the number of kids were?
Yeah, it's on the form.
50.
Hang on a sec. 50.
50?
It's estimated to be 50.
Yep. All right,
The bus.
because it was all the 10th grade, it'd be quite the.
No,
Yeah.
it's certain classes
Okay.
that must study an element of this particular play.
Okay.
It's 50.
And there's
50,
there's
okay.
one teacher's kids basically going.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? 4-0. Okay, next up, any liaison reports?
I was at South Row last night. I want to talk a little bit more about that, I think, at our next meeting. They're really just doing a tremendous amount, and again, I can't emphasize enough how valuable the PTOs are to the schools, so. But just a great group of parents, and I encourage all of the parents in the schools to get involved in the PTO, because I know that they need help. And so this is something that I'm hearing from a lot of PTOs, that the amount of parent volunteers is down. And so even if somebody just comes and helps out with one activity, I think it would be greatly appreciated. The Chelmsford Friends of Music, their next meeting is on January 17th at 6:30 in the library. CPAC will be having a workshop next week called An IEP for My Child. That is from 6:45 to 8:45 at the library. And the Wellness Committee will be meeting at the beginning of February at 3 o'clock at CHS. I'll get you that date. I thought I wrote it down. I think it's the 9th for some reason. No, it's not the 9th, but it's
top of my head.
not the 9th. But I'm pretty sure it is. So.
Anybody else? John, Al? Okay, any new items, action items?
Just the one we talked about,
The what?
the dyslexia.
Oh, the dyslexia thing, oh,
Yeah.
okay. I just want to thank the superintendent and new items for posting the policies on the website. So we got them up there in the PDF format. I think it's good. I think it
Good
looks,
for now.
it's, it's pretty, if you wanted to find something, it's fairly easy to work through the different sections. And, I know once they're hosted by MASC, it'll be even easier to search them. But I think it's good now, the way they are. So thank you for getting those up there.
You're welcome.
Yep. All right, anybody else? Okay, so we're to our open public comment. So if anybody would like to address the committee at this point, I don't think you have to give your name again. I think you're all set to go.
So what I want, Maria Santos again, 19 Parkhurst Road. I had wanted to come to the last meeting and just, first of all, wish all of you a very happy new year. And secondly, to thank you for your service, because I think this has been quite a year where it's been work. Things are getting accomplished, which is nice to see. And the quality of education is what's uppermost, I think, when I hear the discussions of the school committee. And so I just wanted to make that comment and thank you for serving the community. It's not always easy to do. The other thing I'm going to take a moment to just comment on, because I've heard Donna talk a bit about the PTOs, and all of you are talking about it. PTOs are dear to my heart. I think the parental involvement is extremely important in keeping quality of education high. What Donna has said is actually true this year. I think PTOs are seeing that life is tough, and so many people don't have as much time as maybe they did in the past, especially women who, many of the PTOs, the people who come to our meetings are the moms, the women who are back to work and doing so much more that they don't have as much time. So I would encourage the school committee to consider, you have 3 major councils. You have your special ed council, parents. You have your ELL council now, and you have the Council of Schools, which is all the PTOs coming together for a purpose. Maybe having those three councils report or provide you input in some session, rather than just at the school level, but bringing it to this level, because the input parents have is extremely important, and is a motivator for a great education. So that's my 2 cents worth in terms of PTOs. The enrichment of education that is done through the PTO at each school is immense. And budgets are typically between 20, 30,000. At one point, we had a $40,000 budget at one of the elementary schools. And that kind of money that's coming in through the system to bring additional programming, you just are not going to be able to replace it. That important. Okay, so I want to thank you again for your service, and have a wonderful 2019.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so as noted on our agenda, we are going to next have an executive session, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn a regular session and not return to go to executive session.
I move that we adjourn to go into executive session to deal with matters of collective bargaining.
Second.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, you gotta roll.
There has to be a roll call.
Oh, okay.
Aye.
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 Aye. 4-0.
All right, thank you.